So funny when it says that. Mia Huen Oman Emon Nanato Faith Mario Net Hen Dami Convisukut Minuna. Hello, everybody. My name is Faith Murillo. I'm from Torres Martinez, Desert Kuya Indians tribe, and I want to welcome you tonight to our event. And we want to thank our California Indian Nations College. I am a recruitment and outreach specialist with the college, and we want to also recognize our partners. Well, first of all, for those that don't know, are not familiar, maybe this is your first event attending with us. First of all, thank you and welcome for coming. We are a 2-year tribal community college located in Palm Desert, California, on the University of California, Riverside, Palm Desert campus. We are in partnership with College of the Desert, also located in Palm Desert, centrally located, but they have several campuses throughout the valley. We want to especially thank our charter tribe for the college who has supported us and funded us and helped us to get started, and that is the 29 Palms Band of Mission Indians. We want to thank them and our visionary Teresa Mike for all of the work and the visionarying and the everything they've done to make this day and this college possible for all of us to present to you this event tonight. So thank you. We want to thank our president, Celeste Townsend, who's joining us, and all the staff that work hard for us, and for our students. That's our main goal, right? Is we want our success to be your success, so your success, vice versa, our success. So we want to welcome and thank everybody for joining us. Today we have, again, a powerful group of panelists, women, tribal leaders who have been trailblazers in the area of tribal sovereignty and just leaders in general in all aspects of tribal communities and beyond. So we want to thank Lynn Valbuena of San Manuel tribe, Rosemary Murillo of Saboba, Marianne Andreas of Morongo, and also Mary Bellardo of Torres Martinez. Can we all give them a quick hand for being part of our panel here? All right, thank you. Some quick housekeeping rules that I already see all of you following is to remain on mute while our speakers are speaking. And also, again, that we will be recording this for historical preservation because this is important. Words of wisdom shared with us tonight. So we just want to thank and our prayers and blessings to everyone today. How we will be doing this is more of a lecture series, tribal sovereignty lecture series, and we want to just have the women just share their stories with us. So we'll be asking a few questions of each of them. Same question for all. They're going to do a short introduction and tell you about themselves, and then we're going to go into the questions and have them share part of their journey of why we're honoring them today and why they're honoring us with their words of wisdom. So Dr. Joshua Cardenas is here to help moderate. We have some staff that are helping to monitor our audience. If you decide you have or want to ask a question of any of the panelists, we are going to be asking you to put those in the chat. We will be choosing Exalta Salgado, Director of Student Services for SYNC, will be monitoring the chat and looking, and we will be able to select a few of your questions at the end of the presentation. So if you have a burning question to ask, please submit that in the chat and we will see if we can get to a few of those at the end of the presentation. So no special order, but I'm going to go ahead and ask Marianne Andreas to go ahead and give a short introduction, and we will follow suit with the 3 other ladies. Thank you.
Thank you, Faith. Marianne Andreas. I'm from the Morongo Indian Reservation, born and raised there, lived there most of my life, except for 8 years I lived in the Bay Area when I went to school. Then I got married. I married a Lakota man, and then later came on home. And that was when I actually got involved in government politics. I wanted to get my mother a house. She lived in a house that had dirt floors, no running water, no indoor plumbing, no electricity. And so they were building hut homes, and I wanted to get my mother a home. So I got on the housing committee, and that was the start of all of it. I do want to say that I'm so proud and pleased to be serving or speaking today on this panel with three other ladies that are really good friends of mine and that I've known and worked with many, many years. There's hundreds of years here of service to our tribes and to the people of California. I'm proud to come to CINC today. I think it's done such great things, and I see growth in the future for this little effort that's started with Teresa Mike. Thank her so much.
Thank you, Marianne. Thank you so much. We are going to go on to Lynn.
Thank you, Faith. And I want to also thank CINC for putting this together and inviting Rosemary, Mary, and Marianne and myself to this today. It's really an honor to share our stories and journey. Well, my journey with my tribe at San Manuel, I was raised there, and my grandmother was our chair back in the 1950s. And so I watched all the hardships that she went through to bring water and electricity to our tribe in the 1950s, and saw all the meetings that she had and the welfare trucks that would come up, and her trying to coordinate that for our tribal members in the orange groves at the time. And so it kind of set a place in my heart to try to do what I could for our tribal community. So I began my journey at the age of 20 when I was appointed as a housing commissioner, when we at the time had 5 government homes that were about 600 square feet. And I would travel to the meetings every month with other tribes in the BIA to try to get assistance for better homes and housing. And then I was IHS delegate for probably almost 20 years with my mom at the time, and would go to meetings. In Faith, I think that's where we had met. We'd go to meetings all the time for Indian House. And then also I was a gaming commissioner. And then prior to that, I worked for San Bernardino PD at the early age of 22, and the San Bernardino Indian Center, and got more involved with tribes, board of directors, and saw the politics involved with issues, and it had an interest for me. And so I continued on, and then eventually got elected to my tribe on council for secretary, and then treasurer, then vice chair, then chair. So former chair of my tribe and current chair of TASIN, which is the Tribal Alliance of Sovereign Indian Nations, and then have held officer positions for NIGA, NCAI, and NMAI, the National Museum, and currently the Autry Museum, and other organizations locally that are tribal with the American Indian Chamber. So with that, I just have the passion to do what I do and want to continue in a leadership position helping others. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Rosemary Murillo.
Thank you, Faith, and thank you everyone for joining today, and thank you, for the college for asking us and putting this on. This has been an ongoing education that's, spread out, and I'm so happy with that. Education is something so important. I learn something new every day of myself, and I'm, happy that we have a lot of individuals so interested in it, and thank you for the tribes that do support for the college. I'm Rosemary Murillo from the Saboba Band. I been on the past. I'm former tribal chairwoman. I sat on council for 14 years, and as a council member, I moved up into the vice chair position, and then I served on the last few years of the 2 terms as a tribal chairwoman. I also sit as alternate on NIGA, the National Indian Gaming Association. I sit on that board as an alternate. I also sit as a treasurer for TASIN with Lynn, and since 2003. And I also, I'm trying to think how many years it's been since sat on with the Indian Chamber as on the advisory board. It's been a long time, Lynn. I can't even remember when that all started. It's been, anyway, when you keep thinking back like that, those years kind of add up a little bit. And I really enjoyed while I was sitting there, on console of the work that we were doing. It's kind of hard sometimes on the struggles that you have to go through to, make people understand, and it's just educating them over and over who you are and what you're about as a reservation, and how many tribal nations we have in this whole country. They seem to forget about that there's quite a few of us. And it's just a big education moment for them. And it's interesting. They really clueless. We also attend, we're associate of League of Cities. And I think there's, was it 500, Lynn, I think, different cities that go to attend that in California. And we have a lot of city council that approach us and ask us, why are you here today? And we have to educate them, because that all started from a lot of negative response on when the tribes were getting gaming. And so it was a little education to them why we're moving forward on that. So you always, and it seems like just when you get somebody to understand, the following year, there's always new city council members. So it's always ongoing all the time, constantly, to remind them why we're there and what we're doing there. And that I enjoy. So it keeps me a little active on that, even though I'm not on council, but it seems like the same paths of individuals that are here today, we still kind of pass, in passing, we're always, kind of working on the same issues, just making people understand, of what we're about all the time. So thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. Do we still have Mary on? Taria?
Yeah, she's here.
Okay.
Mom, you're on mute. Mom, can you hear me? Because I see her. She's on the other icon that has my name.
Oh, okay. Thank you for helping her.
Oh, golly.
Just want to do a short introduction. If not, I have her bio. I can read her bio for her.
Yeah, go ahead and read her bio and we'll figure it out. Let me figure it out with her.
All right. Well, for those who don't know, Mary Belardo is of Torres Martinez Desert Cahuilla, actually my tribe. So very honored and pleased to have her on. And she did send me a short bio, so let me pull that up really quick. And it's very beautiful, by the way, Mary. Thank you for that. Oh, let's see. So Mary is the proud mother of two wonderful children, Freddie and Taria, and grandmother of two beautiful granddaughters, Rayanne Alka and Emma Cajal. Mary was taken from her family 9 months of age and returned home to their tribe at Torres Martinez at the age of 17, thanks to the love and diligence of her sister, Lucy Toro. She was elected to be the tribal chairwoman in 1991 and held the office for 8 years. She was out of the office for 2 years and returned to office for 2 more years of intrigue and challenges, she says. Since her 55 years of returning home, she sat on many committees, many boards, subcommittees, and panels, far too many to mention. And out of all of them, her proudest was sitting on the founding board for the California Indian Nations College. Thank you so much, Mary. We appreciate that. She's received many certificates, awards, plaques, resolutions, proclamations, and her favorite, and not many might know, but we are now going to celebrate, is being the one she received from the city of Palm Springs, declaring January 27th, 2003, Mary E. Belardo Day. Yay.
Oh, congratulations.
Oh my goodness, that's awesome.
And her proudest overall accomplishment, of course, in her 55 years of being home and with her people, back with her people, was serving her community in several capacities, the most challenging being tribal chairwoman. And we'll get into more of her story with that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Mary. We appreciate you and everything you've done and accomplished for our people.
Thank you.
So-
I figured out the volume thing, so
Oh,
hopefully.
did you?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was honored to share that with everyone.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Yeah. So the first question we have for all of our panelists, and it's probably one that might be a quick answer, might not be. Maybe you'll have some interesting stories to tell us. Is what did you prepare, if you did, or how did you prepare for your leadership roles of especially for your vice chairwoman role, or maybe even your chairwoman. Did you prepare? Was it something that you felt you were ready to take on, or maybe you didn't? Who knows, right? So I'm going to take this first question to let's start with Mary Bellardo, since we have her on her.
Yay, while my volume's working.
Yeah.
Well, as you read from my bio, I didn't grow up on the reservation and so I had no idea. Although after my sister took me in and started introducing me to tribal life, I went to a general meeting and in one of our old buildings, and it was quite an interesting meeting, and I was intrigued by it. So as years went by, she was serving on tribal council at Agua Caliente. And one day out of the blue, she says, you should run for chair. We were having a lot of problems at the time. And she said, you should run for chair. These guys, there was a lot of arguing and fighting among men, mainly men. And she said, you should run for chair. So with that, you do as your elders tell you. And I ran for chair, had no idea what I was getting myself into. And I know now that it was through her association with tribal people and her respect from tribal people and her husband, Ted Toro, too, that I got elected on the first round. So I was just like amazed. And then the hard work came. And so I was not prepared to take on the job, but I'm fully prepared and I have the wounds to prove it. So yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mary, for sharing that. We'll go to Lynn. Lynn, were you prepared, or was this something that you just, stepped into?
Something I just stepped into. I wasn't prepared either, but I had an interest because my mom and my grandmother mentored the kids, our children, our family, and tribal members when we were growing up, and my grandmother was our chairman. So I watched all the things that she did, and it was intriguing to me, especially when she would meet with the local city elected officials and government. So the mayor come up and look at our big house, our ceremonial home there, and things that we did, and our way of culture. And the city took an interest, so that really intrigued me. And they gave me a lot of inspiration to do what I do, but a lot of it was hands-on. I remember because when I started as a housing commissioner at age 20, I had my first child, my son, at 18, and my daughter at 19. And I remember taking them with me to my meetings back then in the 70s. You could do that with at the table with me. And the kids sometimes remind me about that. But things have changed now. And I think a lot of it now has to do, well, I know it has to do with building relationships with people. So you have to educate them so they understand what sovereignty is. And a lot of people don't understand why we make our own laws and our own ordinances and how we're a government and we govern ourselves. So it's educating, and I really enjoy it and have the passion to do that kind of work. And I really do like the educating, as mentioned earlier by Rosemary, for the League of Cities. When we had a casting booth there and handed out information, we had elected officials coming up to our table saying, why are the Indians at our conference? What's the reason and purpose of you being here? And I'm like, whoa, I didn't know how to take it. So there were Rosemary, myself, and a couple of others from Tasman pulled the mayor and his council aside, sat him down for like 15 minutes. And after we explained to them the reason we were there, they're like, wow, well, welcome. It's great to see you. Thank you so much. We didn't know. So just things like that. So you just have to have that passion and take that leadership role and not be afraid to speak up, because you'll find that we know more about our tribe and questions that may be asked. They don't have the answers that we do. And that was one thing that really scared me when I went to my first meeting, whether it was DC or Sacramento, and the legislators. I got nervous and scared, but once I got in there, they were asking me the simple questions that we know. Well, how many tribal members? Where are you located? What's your land base? What do you have? What do you need? And we're doing all the talking, and it was easy. So after that, the rest is history. So but you really want to know that that's something that you want to do. And it's been a long journey for me. And I'm really happy to see where my tribe and other tribes are today. And of course, we all know that there are still tribes out there that still need help and assistance. And the tribes do what we can to help other tribes as well. So that's my story.
Oh, thank you. Yes, yes. Rosemary, so were you prepared for this role in leadership, or how did your story go?
Somewhat, I think it's, I'm sure you'll hear, from all of us that growing up, I think it kind of prepared us understanding of speaking on what the tribal issues are, because you grew up facing those and it surrounded you all the time. So if those questions pertain to what's it like on the reservation of if there's needs and that the tribe, needs on their land for their people, those are easy to answer on that. But at the same time, it is kind of nervous feeling sometimes because you don't know where they're going to go and what they're going to ask. Because, there's some people that are ignorant of when they ask you these questions like Lynn just was speaking of, and they want to know, well, how long were you federally recognized? Are you really are a tribe or not? Because they don't understand the history at all. But I did a lot of committees I served on for my tribe in the community. I was on the enrollment committee. I was working with trying to get our constitution on some of the amendments done. I served on the Noli School Board, and then I got elected into tribal council. So for those first years, we were in the middle of, well, I shouldn't say in the middle of it. It was ongoing since the 20s on our struggle to get our water settlement done. It took almost 70 years to get that done. So I was kind of like at the tail end of it trying to get that. So going to DC with all your information, why we're doing what we're doing. And you would think, but it almost caused us not to have homes out here on the reservation because of our water. We didn't have a good water supply. You would think something like that would have been taken care of a long time ago to make sure that we had, for just quality of life to able to live here. That's why the reservation was small as it was at that time, and because people couldn't stay here. So it was serving on committees that kind of helped you to understand about how things would work, and you learn the process of the resolutions, kind of like your foundation of how things are built, and those resolutions and turn into your, government for your government. They're your laws that, help get developed that way. So that was a process that I kind of, framed it up a little bit for me. So like I said, it's kind of like a lifetime. You've seen what that was about. That's the easier part to able to speak on, when they ask you, those questions. So, but overall, trying to be exposed to the bigger picture of all these representatives and all the senators, that is a little nerve-wracking sometimes.
Well, I think you have all done an amazing job, and sometimes having to put them in their places as well, because a lot of times, they do, need to know that we've had, our leadership roles, we've had our governments in place, we've had, we know who we are, for the most part, and we, just have to work together on that. So thank you. I think all of you have done an amazing job in those roles. And I want to give time to Marianne Andreas to let her know or ask her the same question. Being in council or in leadership roles, did you feel like you were prepared for the role, or how did you prepare if you did?
I don't think I was fully prepared, but I think I learned very quickly, and I think they should have an orientation class for newly elected council people. But I started in various committees, and like Rosemary said, learned how they operate and how you make motions, and how the membership, the role of the membership, the role of the tribal council. And I had, as a child, gone to tribal meetings and sat at my mother's feet while Jane Penn was the chair, Viola Matthews, Robert Martin's grandmother, Josephine Nordy, and various other women were tribal chairs. And I admired the work they did and how people looked up to them and paid attention to them, to what they said and the information they gave to the tribal people. And I came from traditional leadership people on my Pablo side, on my Martin side, on my Sabo side. So I lived with my great grandmother for a while as she was elder and ailing, and so I learned a lot from her as well. And yeah, it's just a matter of life and developing, and I think when I called you, Faith, about this, about the sovereignty class, I told you that I thought that children shouldn't graduate from school without, especially Indian children, without knowing what tribal sovereignty is. And they don't teach it in school, any school, not even in Indian schools. They don't teach what is sovereignty and how did it come about, and you know, what does it mean to Indian people? What does it mean to non-Indian people? Because white people fear it. Non-Indians fear it. They look at it as a loophole. And so, you know, as we've moved along in our various political lives, Lynn, Rosemary, Mary, all of us, we've seen through Prop 5 how people were terrified that the Native Americans, for the first time in history, organized. The first time ever, we had armies of lobbyists, armies of attorneys. We were hooked up with technology. We had cell phones. We had fax machines. We shut down an office in Washington, D.C. when we started a campaign of fax letters to one congressman. They called us and asked us to please stop. They got the message. And so we had a army of public relations people. We had an army of consultants, political consultants, telling us and advising us the best way to move forward. And for the first time ever, we had money to pay for all of this. So people sat up and paid attention to what we said and what we did. And they were all wondering, what are the Indians going to do next? When we went to Washington, they said a group of well-heeled Indians showed up in Washington. So, you know, the rhetoric changed, but I think it's so important that our Native people, our young Native people, truly understand what tribal sovereignty is, because it's the pillar that we stand under, that we build our nations on. And it is vitally important that they do not leave school without knowing that and without teaching it to their own children. It is not public schools' responsibility to teach our children that. It's our responsibility to teach our own children that. Thank you.
Yes, that's very important. Sorry, I couldn't get myself off mute. Yes, that's very important to point out there. And you know, it's what's building our future now. I mean, all of the work and all of the, you know, blood, sweat, and tears that each of you women have done and have come through and gone through, you know, we're more than just survivors. You know, we're you know, thriving now in a lot of sense. But yes, you're right. Also, Lynn, is that there's still other tribes that are struggling too, and we need to recognize that as well. But we're going to go on to our next question, and have Dr. Cadenas, who is one of our professors here, head of academics, and go on to question 3.
One second. Okay, hi everybody. Thank you. I'm so honored to be here. There's so many amazing people in this room, and there's so many amazing people that you're connected to. So I just want to say thank you to all of you that are here, especially to our speakers. Thank you for your presence and your wisdom and all that you're carrying with us to the people here today. So yeah, I appreciate it. I think you answered, you know, quite a bit of the question that I was going to ask. So I'm going to kind of move it a little bit in a different direction, more general way. And I just wanted to ask each of you, what do you think really makes a good leader? So if you could, what are the core values, the knowledge, relationships, the experience? If you could summarize it in a couple words or in a couple, in an example, what really makes a good leader in your mind? And I know we all have the opposite ideas in our mind as well, but I wanted to pull out what you thought, individually, what makes a good leader in your role, or perhaps there's other roles that you're thinking of. Who did you start with first, Faith? Mary?
Yes, I started with Mary Belardo.
Mary, if you would.
Yeah, I'm thinking first that it would be patience. I noticed this newer generation that's coming up, or they're very impatient, and I think it's due to the computers, everything's so fast that they just expect life to go by fast too. But it's a process, and it's a daunting process at times, and so you need patience. Another thing would be that you're going to have to get out and mingle. You're going to have to get out and meet people and increase your personal resources. So when you do need help or guidance, you have places to go. You just can't do it all yourself.
Thank you. I think we're all going to resonate with those ideas. Lynn, would you mind following up?
Mary, I agree totally, Mary, 100% with what you said, but too, you have to want to do it.
Lynn, can you put your volume up, please?
Oh, okay. Let me see. Sorry about that. I thought I had it up all the way. I have it up all the way now. Can you hear me?
It's better.
Yeah.
Is that better? All
Better.
the way up. Thank you. All the way up. Okay. Yeah, I agree 100% with Mary, but also you have to have that commitment and want to do it. A perfect example, I mean, there were many times, in positions of leadership where I get a call saying, Lynn, important issue in Sacramento. Tomorrow we need someone to testify. Please be there, and you need to testify on behalf of the tribe. Just like the day before, and it's like, okay, I'll get a flight, head out in the morning, come back. And then there's times where they'll say, they don't want to hear testimony, but just to see the faces of tribal leaders in the audience is going to have such an impact. Can you just fly in and fly out and just show up? I'm packing a little overnight bag just in case, but just things like that we're all involved with, where you kind of have to want to do it, because in my mind, I'm thinking it's going to make an impact. It's going to make a difference. It's going to change the thinking of, whether it's legislators or an organization that may be negative on sovereignty or on issues that tribes are doing. And we always have to keep them educated. So I just think too that it's, again, going back, as was mentioned, building those relationships, because once you have those relationships, you're going to be getting a call from that a particular legislator or person at a high level, elected official, asking, what is it you need, or can I come out and visit? And that's what you need to do. And then you get that feeling like, wow, we've accomplished that, because we went in even though we didn't have to speak, but they saw us in the audience. So that always gives me a high when that would happen with the tribes, and we'd all walk out of there with big smiles on our faces.
Yeah, thank you, Lynn. I appreciate the view that you got to be there, right? You're one of the people, like many in this room, who are there.
Yes.
So if you would please, I don't see Rosemary. Thank you.
Okay. The question was of what makes
Yes,
you
the
a
question
good-
was, what makes a good leader, and what comes
Okay.
to mind when you think of the core ideas and knowledge, traditions, experience, values that go into that.
I think one of the values that we all have since growing up on our reservations is you learn as a whole, that makes you whole as a tribe, is that, the most value that you have are your people and your land. And if you understand that because we fought so long just to hang on to what we do have, you know, in our history in California. It was such a struggle when they started doing terminations. They did terminations all the way to 62 or 65, I understood. And that's unfortunate that took place. And I think as, you know, growing up, that was one of the things, it was to take care of your land and to keep it. And you're not whole without either the land or the people. So that was one of the main things that you always have to keep your mind on, to why you're doing what you're doing in these positions as an elected official, is to make sure that that always remains there. It doesn't get taken away from us. That's one of the things that's always in your mind all the time. And I think just, you know, it is like kind of like a real quick on hand sometimes, like Marianne says, there is nothing out here that shows what to understand. And I've heard different explanations on sovereignty. Sovereignty doesn't mean the same to all people depending where they live. They have to exercise their hunting rights, their fishing rights, their timber rights, their mining rights. And even though it says they have the rights to that, you always have to exercise that big word sovereignty to make sure it's implemented, that you actually can retain it and keep it. It's one of those understandings I think that we all need to keep in our mind all the time. And why are you doing this? Is because, like I said, as a whole, it's our people and our land that we got it has to remain with us as all. We gave up a lot just to be where we're at today. If we had our way, you know, all this whole country would still be ours. But just to remain where we're at today, we gave up a lot, and they forget that. They think time's moved on. You know, it's a modern world now. Why are you worried about that? Well, we have people that, you know, that we still have to think about and take care of. And so as a leader, you have to understand that where that comes from, like Lynn mentioned, the passion, Marianne said about the sovereignty being taught, and Mary, you know, about our kids. There is, I think, an age gap. It happens once in a while. It's like every 10 years, seems like it kind of, we get that little, you know, for some reason, it's a little separation. And then all of a sudden the kids, it's like brand new to them. They want to know more about their songs and their stories and their language. And so it kind of comes and goes, but there is a gap once in a while that kind of hits us. Why? I don't know. Then you kind of look at the world to see what's going on, and kind of impacts us as well. And that's how it affects a kid's mind of thinking sometimes. So if you can stay in your mind to able to become a leader on that, you know, the first thing is, you know, because we always tell our kids, you got to know where you came from, is, you know, what makes us whole is who we are as Native people. And that's one of them, is our land and our people. Also, always, that's the highest value you could ever put out there, because of what was given up just to remain where we're at today. So our voice needs to still be there and to exercise that sovereignty. And like I said, it means a lot, and, you know, interpretation to other people for where they're living at, what they're fighting for. And that, you know, if they can remember that all the time, even though we got that 14th Amendment that mentions us in there, and it was, you know, part of that 14th Amendment, it keeps saying in the Constitution, it gave everybody that was a citizen a right to vote. Well, that didn't happen for the natives till 1924. So, you know, that's, like I said, you had to fight for all of that. Just to, even though it said so, they still didn't follow that.
Thank you so much, Rosemary. You shared so much good stuff with us. I think we're all on edge and waiting, because all of this is so helpful and so useful for all of us. Marianne, do you have something about what makes a good leader in your mind, and what are those values, experiences, etc., that help culture that?
Yeah, for me, I think it would be caring and understanding. I mean, you have to care about the situation of the tribe and the situation of the tribal members, and you have to understand the different situations of tribal members. Some live on the reservation, some don't. Some would if they could. When we started gaming, a lot of our tribal members came home. There weren't jobs back in the days, so then they were able to come home. So I think it's caring, it's wanting a better life, it's wanting to protect all of the resources of the tribe. And I think it's understanding how to get that done. Just because you fail, you propose a project or uh, an issue, proposition, and it fails, don't look at it as a failure. I mean, go back 2, 3, 4 times until you get it done. You have to have that kind of determination as a leader to get it done, get things done. And I think that there isn't enough respect anymore, especially by the younger generation. And there's so much of this, what can the tribe do for me? Not for what can I do for the tribe? And I think that's very damaging to the tribe as we move forward. The old ways are being lost, and we need to protect that. We need to teach our children, again, like we're teaching them about sovereignty, we teach them about respect, about not trespassing on other people's property, about not speaking certain ways to elders or in front of elders. Just a basic respect that isn't there anymore. And so those are the things that I think are the most critical. I don't care how smart you are, how many letters you have behind your name. If you don't respect, if you don't care, and if you don't understand, it's not going to move the tribe forward. And that's what we're in leadership to do.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Faith, did you have
Yeah,
any
I think
follow-up
we have
question? Or?
probably one of the key questions for organizing this panel. And I will ask it in a bit, but I do want to remind our audience, if you have a question, we are taking questions and we'll pull a couple. We can't probably go all of the questions, but if you have a question for any one of our panelists or all of the panelists, please put it in the chat. We still have a few minutes for you to do that. We're going to take questions after this next one. I think this will be our last question for the panel, and then we'll go on to the Q&A, and maybe we will pull the questions and ask on your behalf if that's okay, and we will present that to all the panel members that we have today. So again, we highly respect and appreciate all of our leaders, whatever gender, but because we have an all women's leadership panel today, one of the questions we wanted to ask and pose and see and just feel, that it's important because, we carry many roles as women in our communities, and a lot of times they're seen and unseen, and maybe appreciated and maybe not so appreciated. But as women, not to take from any of the men, but we go through quite a bit in our lives, and we're life givers. So, what do you feel, and I'm going to start this question with Marianne, Andreas, what do you consider or feel is the most important aspects of being a woman in a leadership role? And what do you feel like that experience was? I know because at times, we've had tribes that had all women councils, and we've had some, and some tribes, there's differences. So we just wanted to feel from your experience, what did you feel, what brought, more to the position? Was it difficult? What was your experience being a woman in a leadership role?
I didn't ever see a difference or feel discrimination. We've had women leaders at Morongo as far back as, like I told you, I used to sit at my mother's knee at tribal meetings, and there were tribal chairwomen. And so I didn't feel that. I have a strong personality. And so even if are men on the committee or any other board that I sit on, I'm not intimidated in any way, shape, or form. And so no, that has never played a role for me being a woman. I came from a big family, 9 kids, and it was probably half and half. We had boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, girl was our order of birth. So we we just survived. I mean, whoever talked loudest and longest won, so that was kind of my teaching grounds. Stand your ground. Don't be afraid to speak. I was taken to Catholic boarding school when I was 6 years old. And so I had to learn to stand on my own 2 feet. I had to learn to speak up. I had to learn to protect myself. I had to learn a lot. My mother wasn't there. My father wasn't there. My older sister and brother were there. And so, I think in actuality, I think I became a protector, always, that I can remember. I can remember as way back being a protector of my family, of my brothers and sisters, being on the bus and slugging it out with somebody who I perceived was bothering my sister or my brothers, and always being a protector. So, I just kind of went from there to one step into leadership, and didn't ever feel or don't let discrimination because I'm a woman bother me. Not at all. Not in any way, ever. Can't do it, won't do it.
Thank you, Marianne. Thank you. That's very, very powerful response. So, Rosemary, same question. What do you consider the most important aspects of being a woman in the leadership role, or holding a position as a woman in a tribal leadership role, or any position of leadership?
I give a lot of, gratitude for when I do see a female that's in a position, because they have the knowledge and they should be valued just as much as the male gender is valued as well in those positions. I don't see no difference on that, but of course, it is there, and you move forward on it, because I know just sitting on council all those years before I became chair, it was when you explain what you want it to happen, and because something wasn't being taken care of correctly in a policy to make changes, I explained it, and they always think women go all the way around in a circle to get to the point, but I never did. I got right to the point. And so when you explained it, they turn around and they will say it, this is male council, and they were like, okay, yeah, we could do it like this. And it's the same thing I said, but they just changed a few words, and they would do that all the time. And it was kind of like, I just said that. You guys just changed it up a little bit. But I know it is because it's almost like, how dare you have a good idea, I guess, sometimes. Overall, when you get out there and do what you do in leadership, I didn't have a problem with that, because I was in that position, or else I wouldn't have been there. If I did, I don't think I would be able to do what I did, to move forward. I had ran, because they had asked me before a few times to get into the chair position, but I didn't think I was ready to do that. But when I did, one of the reasons was I thought it was about time. It was 30 years since, it wasn't fortunate like the other tribes to have females as in the leadership role. My aunt was in chairwoman in the 50s, and then there was a Mary Vasquez in the 70s. So that was 30 years since we've had 2 tribal leaders that were female. And I wanted to do that for the youth, to show that, a lot of our, children are raised with one parent, and usually it's the mother. I wanted them to have, to look at us not just as those, because we're all caretakers, we're all caregivers to everyone all the time. It's just a part of who we are in our big families. And it just, example of, how a female can do all of this, because she is already doing it at home, and it just putting it in a higher level of, in the community. To me, in my mind, that's what it looks, and I hope they appreciated that, because I did talk to a lot of kids. I had served on the board for National Congress of American Indians, and we were addressing the youth one day, and these 2 little girls came up, and they're from Pueblo. Well, if you ever look at Pueblo and you look on the wall, there's nothing but males.
Yep.
And if they are in a position working for the tribe, the females, it's either like a secretary or treasurer. And they said, well, how do you do all this? And I said, well, you got thousands of years of culture that, are pushing against you. I said, but don't devalue yourself. You are valuable. Don't ever think you're not. Value to contribute to what to your tribe there. I said, think like that and make them understand that there is a value, or why are you here? You didn't get put in these positions without somebody thinking highly of you. I said, I know it's hard. It's a struggle, because I know one day, I don't know, we were in Albuquerque for something. I saw showing my daughter. I said, look on that wall. I said, what's wrong with it? And I had all the other, the Pueblo Council. I said, there's no women up there. This was a long time ago. And I said, I know it's a culture, but at the same time, women are the caretakers and caregivers of everything, the backbone of a lot of things. They have so much knowledge that they could put forward, and so I told her, you're a value, don't forget that. I said, you have to speak up on that and make it yourself heard. I said, that's so important. I said, to be that face of your tribe like that, because they look at you in respect for, in other areas that you do. And you just need to make sure that, your voice is being heard.
Thank you, Rosemary. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that there hasn't been really, a difference, or, it didn't affect one way or another. But, it's always good to see good leadership, period. Mary, same question. Did you feel or experience anything as a woman being in a leadership role that had an impact on you in your life?
Well, I think at Torres Martinez, if I remember right, I think the first lady was Eleanor Subish, and then Helen Jose at one time served for a little bit too. So it's mainly been men, but I have nothing against men. I mean, if they're committed and have the right mindset, they can do an excellent job as well. So it does matter, but it shouldn't matter because of our gender. I had the same experience when I go to Washington, D.C., and people would not treat you like a lady, but yeah, you were less than, I felt, oftentimes around the men in the suits and the ties and the this and the that and the other, but I never felt intimidated by it. I would look at it as, okay, it's on, what are we here for? And set out most of the time, I felt like I usually won the battles that I had there. Because of my experience not living on the reservation and being in integrated schools and around all kinds of kids, and I didn't feel like fighter, in that world. Although I did used to get upset that all the ladies wore black in Washington, D.C. It seemed like they all had on black suits and black heels. So we went home and I've got the brightest dress I could find. And when I went back, it was a yellow dress. And there I was like, come on, ladies, you need to relax. It is a man's world. And yeah, I understand the tennis shoes that you guys have to run around in because you're going all over the place, but relax. Yeah, I've always been proud to be a mother. I mean, I'm a woman and a mother and a wife and a chairman and a this and a that and the other. It's a lot. But, if you sign up for it, just like anything that our people commit to, be it bird singing or funeral songs or leading your people, you have to be committed to just take them over the finish line. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for that. Lynn, you want to tackle this question? Anything you want to share on that?
All of what you're saying, and I've never had any issue either with, men being on the council or on other boards that I was on with different organizations, and they've always treated, women respectfully. And I know with our business committee or tribal council at Commonwealth, it's never been, I can't recall ever being all men. It's always been a mix. I think even a couple of times there were more women than there were men on our council. And back in 1966, our tribal council were all women. And that in 1966 is when the 5 women had put together our bylaws and constitution and signed it off. And that was in 1966, and there were, 5 females, my great aunts and my cousins. And so, I remember those days back then. And then I think over the years, we just have more and more women in leadership positions with their own tribes and with other organizations that they're involved in. We see more women now, and I think I don't have any, issue with men being on the committees. And a lot of times it's a good thing because you have that diversity. Where if there's an issue with, your tribe or another tribe, it might take a little touch of a woman's touch to handle the problem instead of the the man or the gender of being male. And it's good to have both on there, but I've never really had an issue with that. And I'm just happy and glad to see a lot more women now in those leadership positions. So it's all been good.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, ladies. It's good to hear that, I think our tribal communities have forged and leaps and bounds beyond our own, traditional US government here, where they're still trying to catch up. But I think that, a lot of our tribal communities have already addressed, and already have a system in place to have everybody have a place to help, no matter what gender, no matter where you're at. Everybody has their respective places. So thank you all for that. We do have some audience questions. I don't know if Zelda and Josh, Dr. Cardenas want to help with asking some of these. I'm not getting all of the chats for some reason. Zelda, do you want to help with that?
Yes, so I have a couple of questions here. And I'd like to hear from all the women on the panel. For a young council member that it has been a struggle to learn or earn trust from older generations. Can you share how you have overcome those habits that were there for a new member, again, with traditions or processes that are in place, and then you're coming in as a new member? What advice would you give to a new member to overcome, be able to succeed in that situation and to earn the trust of members that have been there for a while? Would you please share?
We can start out with, let's start out with Rosemary.
Oh, thank you, Faith. I believe, we don't always have the answers, and I know it's hard, especially if you did, one of the, obstacles that kind of faces some of them, if they didn't always be a part of when, like Marianne says, I've been going to these meetings before I was born, it's just ongoing. When, we didn't have a tribal hall like we do now, and we had the whole hospital there. That's where we used to hold our meetings all the time that we had on the reservation there. But I always go talk to everybody all the time, because you don't have the answers for everything. I'm fortunate to still have a few council members that are some are in the 80s and some are in their 70s. I would go talk to them how some situations, were handled. And just learning that, you can always say, well, I spoke to, so-and-so, this is how this was handled or conducted at that time. Because a lot of times something will come up, you thought you knew it all and heard it all. And so, well, how do we approach this to settle this? And that's one of the things that I always appreciated, was able to have some older, elders that were there that I could talk to and approach them. And I know on tribal council is you have to ask them questions. I know it's like kind of listen to learn, but you're not going to learn a lot if you don't ask those questions that are in your mind. It don't matter what it is. That's the only way you're going to learn, to find out anything on that. I know it's kind of difficult because you're mentioning some habits. It depends on how long that individual served there. And maybe they're getting complacent on thinking that, everybody taking it that, oh, they already know. And a lot of times they don't. I see it myself a lot of times in the meetings. People ask a question, it's like, don't you know? This is how it's always been. You don't know that? It kind of confuses me. And they say, well, and they'll lay the whole thing out, and it's like, that's just common knowledge, and they don't have that. And I get a little disappointed when I hear that sometimes. But it's, and I'm not trying to say that, I know everything, but it's just that it's just a part of your life when you're going through these meetings all the time. But if there's something, a section of stuff that they want, because I know when you sit at that table, what comes across that table, you have more information than they do out there. So
That's
when
right.
you're brand new, you have to fill them in on that and catch them up to that. I always did that all the time, and I still kind of do that. If they'll ask me something, I've gone in several times to fill them in on things that, because they weren't there. When we had our opening for the new casino, we had recorded a lot of families, and they wanted me to speak on our customary adoption bill because all the council that was sitting at that time weren't a part of that bill. So I had to go in and talk about how we were able to get it done and passed and through the state of California. And that was the first time there was anything like that. We were fortunate at that time who our legislator was to help push that through. And it was at an ugly time because Schwarzenegger was governor. And finally, like Marianne says, sometimes you don't get your bills through. Well, there was a little pushback from family services, but we finally got that all taken care of and got the bill out again. And the following year, it was a little bit better. And lo and behold, that was the first bill Schwarzenegger actually signed. But our legislator at that time was Republican, so that helped a lot. And so he carried the bill. That was Paul Cook. But things like that, if there's a lack of knowledge on that, you got to help them out, because I always tell everybody, I know this one young girl was like, she was really upset. They told me, I don't know anything, and then they said, I don't do nothing. I said, you come up here every day, you're making decisions on what goes, on our agenda here. I said, you're doing something. So don't let them tell you that. She was all upset and because she never served before on anything really. And I said, you are acting as what you are supposed to in your position. Don't let that get to you. So like I said, we're just mentioned in the beginning, educate, and your own people need it. I spend a lot of time sometimes, because people forget about stuff. And sometimes I have to get the cobwebs out of my head here, and I'll call something, and I explain what occurred at that time and what happened and why we did it. So yes, you need to get them informed. And I know it's repetitive sometimes, but it's, not unless it's not important to them at the time, it just kind of goes over their head. But yes, you got to tell them over and over.
Okay, the same question from another member of the panels. And also if you could add, how do you keep moving forward? How do you stay motivated? How do you, continue? You mentioned patience earlier, but how do you, keep going up against that when they're telling you no, that your ideas are not going to work, or that's not the way we've done it before? Again, the advice on how to continue to stay motivated and pushing forward.
Let's go to Mary Ann. Or do you want to go, Mary Bilardo?
Yeah, I
Okay,
still
go
fresh
ahead.
in my head because I have cobwebs too, Rosemary. The need as the leader, you need to convince, because no matter what, you're always going to have this side not wanting or this side wanting it. So you have to convince your membership, and hopefully you have enough followers that, and with facts, to let them know how it benefits them, how it will benefit maybe their children, how it would benefit the tribe as a whole. You just can't expect to be able to just ram things down people's throat, or get a gang on this side and bring all the votes in to push things aside. You take your patience and you convince people with truth and honesty, and I think that'll work. A young person, the advice I would give them is that they need to read. That was one of my holdbacks in school. I didn't like to read, but I read well, but I didn't like to read. And as I was because I was new in the position, I started going through the mail and I reading all these things from BIA and PL this, and those things didn't mean anything to me. I had no idea what anybody was talking about. Fortunately, my brother-in-law, Ted Toro, was chairman for many years of Torres Martinez de Sales, so I could refer to him for some things. And that's another thing they need to do, is not be afraid to go up to an elder and ask the question, whatever their question
Right.
is. Yeah, don't be backwards, or I don't know her, or she's not related to me, and all that stuff. If you want help, get help. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm sure all of us are willing to share what knowledge we have in any situation that someone would present to us, because we want to help our people. We don't want to hold them back.
Yeah, thank you. Mary Ann, anything more to share on that?
Yeah, I would just say that when you're younger and you're dealing with an elder, you have to give them their due. You have to earn their respect. They're not going to give it just instantly. You're going to have to sit down and talk to them. Maybe relate yourself to your grandparents who might be their age, or you know, so that they'll know who you are, who your family is, what you stand for. Young people come, and people like me who've been on council for 40 plus years, everybody knows what I stand for. But when a young person comes, they haven't had time to take a stand, take positions, stand up and speak at a meeting so that everybody knows where they're coming from. So, if you take the time with with everybody, but elders in particular, and pay them a little extra respect, I think that goes a long way. It helps just with tribal members in general, give them a little extra information, something that that they may have a question on, or something that they oppose, and help them understand um, why you feel why you have a different position than they do. And then don't take it to the enemy stage, just you just have different positions. That's all. You can still get along and still work together on other things. But I think paying respect to elders is is the most important thing that we can do. They're like living encyclopedias, and they may know things that you don't know, and that if they open up and let you know, you can learn a lot. You can really learn a lot, and it's valuable. So that would be what I would say, is pay extra attention to everyone, but in particular elders.
Yeah. Thank you. Awesome advice. And Lynn, anything more you want to add to that?
Yes, all the comments were great, and I don't want to repeat everything again that was said, but I agree with the respect with tribal elders, because I know that at many of our meetings, a tribal elder may speak and go on and on and on about an issue and ask questions, and then you see some of the younger tribal members saying, well, gosh, didn't they know that? We've been doing that for a long, don't they know? But you have to respect your elders, let them speak. You need to educate the younger kids, as mentioned. I know that with San Manuel, we do our best to try to mentor our young kids, so when they become of age, they can run for the tribal council. But there are some that maybe are afraid to speak up, or maybe are intimidated, maybe don't want to talk in front of other people because they've never done that before. But just showing that respect and trying to educate them as much as you can, or if they bring up an issue that's important to them or they want to do, maybe ask them, because I know I would always do that, and say, well, would you want to start that committee? Would you want to participate and do something with that? So just to get tribal members involved with whatever it might be, because there are so many different committees now with tribes on different things that they have going on, whether it's culture or education or healthcare. There's a lot of things that could be done by other tribal members who have the passion to work specifically in one area of work. And we try to get as many tribal members to participate as possible. But when they're a new elected leader, they come in and they might not know, and they have to learn. Like I said, sometimes it's not wrong because maybe they weren't on committees, or maybe they didn't ever attend a conference for healthcare or education, and they have a lot of questions. But again, going back to what Mary said earlier about patience. We have to have patience, and it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge, but we want to educate our tribal members and have them participate and work with everyone, because it's not all about just, us specifically. It's about the whole tribal community and the children.
Thank you, Lynn. And thank you, everyone. I don't know, Zelda, if there were any other questions. We have time for maybe one more
Yes.
short question.
So the question is we talked about young leaders. Now we'd like to address a young council that has maybe not access to elders or former members that will help them analyze or question things. Who would you say is the best resource, or what is the best resource for the council? Should they or do you recommend retaining an attorney who specializes in tribal law? Or what resources do you or would you say that are out there for young councils?
Any of the ladies, you're welcome to answer, whoever wants to take this one.
I'll start. Attorneys are necessary in this world where we're at today. You need an attorney, but not necessarily or at all to explain our culture. I'm not sure who I would recommend. I can't even imagine a young tribal council with no elders, but there's phones. You could call somebody from another tribe and, tell them what you're looking for. There's all kinds of resources, Native American magazines and BIA, they've become more Native employed than they used to be. And yeah, you want to seek out your own first. And I have a quick story. I had to go to Washington, D.C. on a lawsuit that we'd been fighting forever. And a meeting had been set up. And I was told that I was going to meet with the chairman of the tribe that was challenging us. And so I agreed. I went. And then on the way to the meeting the next day, the guy tells me that the chairman's not our attorney, not the guy who he was a good attorney, but he says, well, the chairman's not going to be here. It's going to be the CEO, a non-Indian guy. And it bothered me. I thought, I'm the duly elected chairperson for Torres Martinez, and that's something in our community, and I want to speak with the chairman of that tribe that's challenging us. I don't want to speak to his CEO, a staff member. And it was not so much against him, it was just disrespectful to me. And so the attorney kept arguing, and not arguing, but insisting, well, just sit in the meeting and I'll do the talking and this, that, and the other. And it just wouldn't sit right with me. So he says, okay, Mary, if you need a break, just shoot me a note and I'll call for a break. So the guy, the CEO spoke first, and I slipped a note to the attorney and I said, I need a break. And when we broke, I left. I went on a taxi and went to the veteran cemetery, and my husband had asked me to look for a fellow Army guy that he had passed away, to see if his name was on the wall. But I cried, I barely made it out of the building before I started crying, but I was just furious at this attorney. They have an ulterior motive, and it has nothing to do with the tribe, the survival of the tribe, or health, or children, or anything, And so I don't think that the attorney is the one that we should advise our young people to turn to first. I mean, it dry everything else.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments? Any of the panelists? A young council that needs some guidance, who would they go to?
I would hope they would find someone other than, attorneys do serve a purpose, but not for something to run your whole reservation, your tribe. I'm sure there's something, I don't know if that's ever happened before, because I know.
Oh, yes.
Marianne and Lynn and Mary, you probably recall there's the tribes that were terminated and that they went back, I know, to get recognized again. there is a lot of process to go through, and one of the things is always to take care of your culture, your traditions, your language is one of those. I don't know how many things that you have to go through to prove that, and always have meetings. So I can't, and how they interpret that sometimes, I don't know, because I've kind of, even though they have someone to go to, I've heard it through the years. I'll be sitting in the audience at NCI, National Congress of American Indians, and somebody will ask a question, why isn't this happening? You know, we need this. And it's like, it's been done. There is a resource for that. It's the questions they frame, and you can almost tell what they're trying to ask because they don't have the history of what took place. I can always hear it in their voice when they're talking about something. They need a lot of direction to put them in that right place. And there is people that'll approach them, that'll come up, you know, say, well, if you need help with this, you know, and I'm glad for those people that you step up to do that. But I know I've been in places where, you know, they totally just don't grasp onto that. And I don't know how they were even put in that position or even wanted to take that position without learning a little bit more about their background, because I don't think it would be that hard if you have to go to archives or whatever, or some past minutes of anything of the history of, you know, of your tribe. You learn from that. And like I said, maybe we're more fortunate from, you know, we've been doing this before we were born, you know. All my aunts and uncles were a part of it, and I had an uncle that was a chair, an aunt that was a chair, uncles that were councilmen, you know. So you know, they're since passed, you know, but it's just that you're always a part of this. You retain that knowledge of how you conduct those meetings and how to able to get the information you need. But the only thing I could, you know, suggest going through archives or finding like what happened, and to able to get themselves educated. I hate to see them, you know, approach, because there has been attorneys, what was it? I'm trying to think of that just tribe just let them make their decisions for them, and they'll speak up in those hearings, and they'll be there, but they won't say anything. And if our attorney will speak for us, they turn it over right away. And if you ever hear a public comment when they get a call saying, how do you feel about this? And if the attorney answers, that means they're not running their own tribe. That's just my feelings. I don't like that when I hear this, they let their attorney answer for them, then there's no tribal leadership there.
I agree with you, Ray.
Thank you for the question. That's a challenging one. So yeah, that's hard to answer, but
You
I'm
know,
glad that, go ahead.
there is the Bureau of Indian Affairs. They keep records on every tribe going way, way back. There's historical societies. There's public libraries. There's the archives, like Rosemary said. There's many, many ways and resources that you can research your tribe's history. You know, if you make an application for recognition, that's what's going to happen. They're going to go back into your history and
Right,
see who is who and what's what and who belongs where.
right, right. Well,
It's
I
hard
hope
work,
that,
but you
go
have
ahead,
to do
Lynn.
it.
Lynn.
Sorry, Mary Ann. Oh,
Go ahead.
can you hear me? No, I was
Yes,
just going to mention, you know, if it's a new council like that, and again, depending on what the issue is, there are, you know, of course, many tribes locally here in the state that would share resources, depending again on what the issue is, if they've experienced anything like that before, because I know there's been times where if a tribe called, but, you know, we personally couldn't help them out, but said, you know, well, gosh, have you contacted, as was said by Mary Ann and others, this agency or this business or consultant, or whether, you know, it's an attorney, or depending on what the issue is. Referrals are always great with resources, and a lot of the tribes have those, because they've been in business with, you know, other businesses with their tribe for many, many years, and they have, you know, information like that they can share on resources and contacts.
okay. Good. Well, then we did find some answers. Thank you, ladies. Thank you all. So that's going to pretty much conclude the panel and the presentation. We appreciate everybody that's come online, and we will definitely try to make this recording available. It takes some time to work through the technical parts of it, but we have someone to do that. So thank you all. Thank you all. We can go ahead and do stop recording, I guess. But we want to thank each of our panelists, Lynn, Rosemary, Marianne, Mary. Thank you so much for everything you've done. Thank you for the support. Thank you for